Today's pod is entitled Moscow Mule. And I just tried to think up some other way to say Putin without saying Putin. So Moscow Mule came to mind because it's a delightful cocktail made of vodka, ginger beer, and lime juice. Fantastic. Ginger beer. As summer approaches, as many of you have maybe uh, partaken in your life when you mix ginger beer with a fine dark rum like Gosling's, then that's a wonderful summer cocktail. A little bit sweet, but since I don't drink anymore myself, I guess I just like talking about it. Because as a young man, one of the first jobs that I had was as a bartender, which was wonderful and fit my genealogical inability to keep my mouth shut. It worked out just fine. But we're talking about Putin today because two main news items that are connected to the overall conflict in Iran. I mean, there's in the background are the accusations from various parties about whether Putin or Russia and Russian intelligence, GRU or otherwise, provided or are providing targeting information to the Iranians in an effort to harm U.S. service persons and interests. And I still haven't seen that proven conclusively yet. He's a guy that has shared intelligence with them for half as long as not quite. I was going to say half as long as I've been on the earth, but not quite. But for more than 25 years, 27 years, he's had a relationship with them and giving, buying and selling materiel and trading intelligence. That's what he does. But the two issues that are of most interest to me today are if you saw in the news feeds in the last few days, your president, Donald J. Trump, suggested that Ukraine was going to be providing some intelligence to the United States on how they can more effectively combat drones. Because with endless ingenuity, our dear friends and allies in Ukraine have had increasing success battling what are Iranian manufactured drones. They they go to Putin and he uses them on the field of battle in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians have come up with various ways with jamming equipment and other ways that are still um, uh, largely classified to interfere with the Iranian branded drones to reduce their effectiveness. And so Trump, who should have been spending more time and money helping our friends in Ukraine, instead of he, of course, is entirely beholden to Vladimir Putin. So the neat little game, which you have to give credit where credit's due, when you see ingenuity, innovation, or just a really freaking smart idea, even if there's evil on one end of it, it's not it's not a bad idea to acknowledge it and study it, because if you don't understand what your enemy is doing, then you're already losing the battle and the war. right? If you're not a student, a lifelong student, then you're all done. So the neat part of this trick is, and I'm going to imagine that it won't be wholly successful, but think about it from Putin's perspective. Right? He can talk to Trump or message him through intermediaries and say, what would be really helpful on top of the part two of today's pod, which is sanctions relief, which we'll talk about. But what you should do, DJT, is you should contact Ukraine and ask them to support you, to support the great fighting men and women of the United States of America in combating these drones, because they're banging you up and also your allies in KSA, UAE, and other parts of the Middle and Israel. But think about it: if Ukraine has gathered, created countermeasures that are effective against these Iranian drones, and Ukraine was able to deliver all or part of that intelligence, that innovation to Trump, it'll be in the hands of Vladimir Putin in 15 minutes. Right? So this is one of those wait and see as the situation develops, because I couldn't confirm that there has been any progress on this. But you have to appreciate how cute Putin can be, right? Because he's doing this and 27 other things, active measures, in Germany and France, down the up the road to his homeboy Mr. Orban, who is fighting hard to get ready for the parliamentary elections in April, right? And old Vic wants to stay in power, and with as we mentioned in the pod a few days ago, there are already their GRU teams on the ground in Budapest getting ready to fight the good fight on behalf of Viktor Orban, because that's a win for Putin if Orban stays in power. And, they have more resources, and we're not helping the opposition transparently, but we're not able to put the full weight of the United States behind the opposition, because you don't do that. You don't try to affect the outcome of elections in a country that isn't your own. Now, Trump does it every single day, and so does J.D. Vance. It's wrong, but they're doing it. There's some, J.D. Vance, 13 months ago, right, was in Munich advocating for the free speech rights of Nazis. And there has been no days off for the Trump administration trying to help right-wing extremist groups, as we've talked about before, in France and in Germany and in the UK and in Slovenia and other places, and the Nordic countries as well. So yeah, it's, you hate to use the word cute because people's lives are on the line. But again, this is the great game of espionage, right? There is still a game when you break it down and you have to separate out the emotional elements of it. War is horrible. Those children that got killed on day one, right? You have to be, you have to allow yourself to view those things in my humble through the absurd lens and in through the outdoor is what is that? That's a 1978, 79, 80. The last Led Zeppelin album of original material. I think Coda came after that, but that was kind of rejects and B-sides that didn't make it. So In Through the Outdoor was the last original material studio, the last studio album made up of entirely original material was In Through the Outdoor. And I always loved that title because it kind of, it has an absurdist's vibe to it, right? And you're dealing with a man, not DJT. I don't, is his behavior absurd? No. Is it disgraceful? Yes. It's a lot of things, but this is not about him. We're talking about Putin. You have to view it, his anticipating strategies that he might employ. You have to look at the entire history of the KGB, multi-decade KGB career, and it never ended. He he is a lifelong learner. That is for sure. While other leaders tap out, go on, do other things, get killed, and as the world turns. But Putin is there, learning from mistakes, learning from the loss in the election in 2020, making adjustments, and moving on. So, yeah, I just keep your ears out, and if you see a story related to the Trump asking quietly, loudly, in any way through front channels, back channels, or anywhere else for the oh you know I mean, the perfect message is use the Trump flattery program on the Ukrainians. Hopefully they're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe trick. Like, oh my God, these innovations, excuse me, that you're employing on the ground in your country that is under siege, constant barrage from the Russians. If you've got some intelligence, share it with us because we've been such good friends to you as the U.S. Donald Trump has always had your back. Not has been a uh, complete and utter coward in one way, but Trump's cowardice doesn't calculate in this situation as much as it does in others. Tacoing out. This is a directive from his controller, right? So think about how that information flow. Will he be able to do the banana and the tailpipe trick to the Ukrainians to get a little bit of intelligence that will immediately be shared with Putin to make his troops more effective at killing Ukrainians with the Iranian drones? I'm going to watch it. The other is it's just, sanctions relief. when you heard it, you said, "This is just fucking bull. This can't be true." The U.S. government is granting sanctions relief on oil and gas for Russia. The two majors, but there are there are 30 there are at least there are 2 to 3 dozen other shadowy companies, some operating in Iran, that are that are under the larger umbrella of, I was going to say Soviet era, Russian energy. But then the sanctions also attached to any company, any subsidiary that was more than 50% owned by any of the large, this is all the old Russian oligarch network. So Putin is getting paid, obviously, with the oil price. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this platform, and you've been getting barraged. We hit 120, and then this morning was 93. Talking about Brent crude spot price, right? Just as a comparison, we know about the Urals, which is the Russian oil, what Putin has available to sell outside of the gambling, the casino that he plays in every single day of his life. But the Urals oil, which it's not, half the price of Brent, but from a 2 to 1, just from a simple math, a back of the envelope sort of math thing, you used to be able to calculate, the if the Brent price was 100, then Urals was likely to be closer to 60, say, somewhere in that range. But now, what the uncertainty, what the disruption in the market is going to do because of the increased demand and the near impossibility of delivering because of the dangers in Hormuz, which result in no insurance. Now, the Russian shadow fleet isn't as concerned with insurance. Their insurance is more guys with rifles with scopes on the deck of they play, they're hard guys, and so they will. There are rules that preclude ships from passing through the straits. But think of the people that are on Vladimir Putin's speed dial. If he wants to get things moving through the Middle East as a guy that's on the on OPEC plus, he's got numbers on his speed dial that can get shit done. Oh. But the very idea that here we are in the middle of the war, whether or not Putin, Russia state security, uh, GRU or otherwise, is providing any information whatsoever to the U.S. adversaries, while Vladimir Putin is controlling outcomes in the White House. Don't argue with me about absurdity. We're living in it. I joked yesterday about being in a sim, and sim is kind of a fun idea if people aren't dying. Less fun then, but it doesn't make our current reality less absurd, less bizarre, because the um, changes places in handy dandy, right? That the guy that was your enemy today is your friend tomorrow. But then what happens overnight is you go home and you find him in in bed with your partner, and then the next day, a Russian agent is is infecting one of the leaders of the world's largest companies with an STD and hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. So, you know, sure, you want to be grounded in reality and you only want the facts, Joe Friday. That's fine if you can operate that way. But while you are setting those guardrails, the world has passed you by. So unless you're looking at the world soberly and accepting it for what it is until you're able to change it, you don't like it, that's fine. But not liking the situation doesn't mean that you can treat the world as if it were the way that you want it to be. You can't control the world that way. You certainly can't control your adversaries that way. And you can't even control your allies that way. Because as we've learned in Trump 2.0, even your allies are under constant assault. The the killer's in the house, right? In the house. So yeah. So a pleasure. This was like, hey, can you talk about somebody other than Putin? Of course I can, and I do almost every day, at least 6 days out of 7. But you can suggest back to me in the comments whether you take all of what I shared with you as as 100% verified. You know, open to interpretation. There are different opposing viewpoints are welcome, but there's enough in there. There is the supposition about convince whether Trump is trying to convince the Ukrainians to provide that important strategy, that those secrets, and whether he's going to turn around in one day and hand them over to Putin. It might take 2 days. So I could be wrong on the timing, but on the general flow, I like my odds better. So yeah. So that'll do it for today. It's not 50 today, not 50 degrees Fahrenheit in northern Massachusetts today. It'll be closer to 60 degrees. Amazing. And looking in the forward-looking forecast, by the time St. Patrick's Day rolls around, there could be more snow. So yeah, that's a good time. I'm going to do the same today with maybe what I'll try to do is I'm going to lift the camera as I inexpertly yesterday when I was disconnecting and moving on, I saw that I didn't do a great job, and there was a little bit of lag right at the end of the feed due to my thick thumbs and poor coordination. So my apologies for that, but obviously you know what to do. You see me do that again, you just you move on. But it's a pleasure as always. Kindly do all of those stack, restack, retweet, and subscribe, and try to drag somebody into this horrible little widening gyre of Russian conspiracy theory. Bring them along with you. Invite a friend. Invite 2 friends. Invite your wife. Invite somebody else's wife. You're all welcome. So, thank you. And I'm going to try to do this. What I'm going to do is give you a little sweep of some snow on the ground still in the neighborhood, and then I'm going to try to turn the switch here and get in enough shade and not piss off the dog.